Henry planted the pine cone beside the new house. In time, a seedling emerged. Henry watered and weeded it, and as time passed, both he and the tree grew tall and strong. Henry especially liked to hammer away in its shade, and he became quite a good carpenter, building many projects with his skilled hands. So there's a little sapling in Henry's great house. And here's this big, beautiful tree, and there's great big Henry. As Henry grew up, however, he became busy with other things. He got married, moved away, and had a family. And most summers, though, he returned to visit his parents. On lazy days, he sat beneath the tree with his son, teaching him how to build things with the old claw hammer. As he got even older, Henry sometimes wondered where the time went. One day he was a young boy waking up with a shiver, and the next he was an old man living alone. Not needing a big place anymore, he decided to move back into the house where he grew up. So there is Henry's house with this big, beautiful tree. And here is Henry as an old man deciding it's time for him to go back home. Now, considering the fact that this book is about the Rockefeller Center tree, and I've given you all that information about the Rockefeller Center tree, what do you think's going to happen with Henry's tree? To keep himself busy, Henry began working on the house, which was showing its age. He especially liked using the old claw hammer. Its polished handle, smooth and dark from wear, felt comfortable in his hand. One day, as Henry worked on the front porch, a man drove up to see him. The man told Henry that he worked for Rockefeller Center and that it was his job to pick out the new Christmas tree each year. "I just love your spruce," the man said. "When I saw it from my helicopter yesterday, I knew that it had to be this year's tree." Henry wasn't sure what to do. He knew that being asked was such an honor. But he and the tree had been together for a very long time, and he was reluctant to let it go. So here's Henry on the ladder fixing his house, and here's the fellow from Rockefeller Center. And there's that big, beautiful tree. "I know that I'm asking a lot," the man said, "but if you agree, I can promise you that that tree will bring joy to millions of people." Henry thought some more. "And when the holiday season is over," the man continued, we will mill the tree and use the lumber to help build a new home, to help a family build a new home." A family in need. Suddenly, Henry felt a shiver, and the calendar in his mind flipped back to 1931. Driving to New York City with his father, meeting Frank and the other workers, building the house, planting the tree. He knew what he had to do. I've been given so much," Henry said. "I want to give something back. The tree is yours." So here is Mr. Rockefeller Center talking to Henry. And there's Henry thinking about what to do, even though he really knew what to do. Just before Thanksgiving, Henry received an invitation to the tree lighting. On this special day, a car picked him up and drove him all the way to Rockefeller Center, where he met the family whose new house would be built with the tree's lumber. They hugged him and thanked him many times for his generosity. Afterward, Henry stood off to the side and watched the family's young daughter. "It's so beautiful," the girl said softly as she stood up at the enormous tree. Then something caught the child's eye. A pine cone had fallen onto the ground. Picking it up, she turned it over and over in her hands before stuffing it into her pocket. If ever there was a magic moment, Henry thought, this is it. So here's the beautiful tree in Rockefeller Center. And here's that sweet little girl who found the pine cone just like Henry did. I'm going to try not to cry when I read this next part. Henry walked over to the little girl and they stood together gazing at the glittering tree. Then Henry reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the old claw hammer. Here you go, Sparky, Henry said. You'll be needing this. And look at the beautiful tree when it's lit. It's just gorgeous. Beautiful artwork. That is the end of the story, but I'm going to read you two things. I'm going to read you something about the Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center, and then I'm going to read you something about Habitat for Humanity, which they're all kind of tied in together. About the Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center. Since 1933, countless New Yorkers and countless visitors to the city have come to Rockefeller Center to marvel at the world's most famous Christmas tree. Adults who visited the tree as youngsters now bring their children and grandchildren to share in the amazement. The first tree was erected by construction workers digging the foundation for Rockefeller Center in 1931. They wanted to show their appreciation for having jobs at the time during the Great Depression, when so many others were out of work. The 23-foot tree, which they pooled their own money to buy, was decorated with garlands and other ornaments handmade by their families. Today, the Christmas trees that grace Rockefeller Center are much grander, measuring 70 to 100 feet tall and about 45 feet wide. Each is decorated with 30,000 multicolored LED lights strung on 5 miles of wire. Tree selection begins with helicopter flights over New York, New Jersey, and New England. Using a laptop computer equipped with GPS, the chief gardener of Rockefeller Center records the locations of promising trees and then visits them on the ground. Once the choice is made, a team of 20 arborists, an arborist is somebody who tends or cares for trees, fells the trees using a 280-ton all-terrain crane to lower it into a custom-built trailer. When the trailer and its police escort reach Midtown Manhattan, the crane lifts the tree onto a platform beside the Rockefeller Center skating rink. The annual tree lighting is a spectacular event attended by crowds of New Yorkers and tourists and watched on television by people around the world. It takes place the week following Thanksgiving. In 2007, a new tradition began when Tishman Speyer, the company that owns Rockefeller Center, began donating the wood from the tree to Habitat for Humanity. Habitat uses the lumber to help families in need build affordable homes. If you don't know much about Habitat for Humanity, I'm going to read you something in the back of this book that explains kind of what their organization is about. About Habitat for Humanity International. Nearly 2 billion people around the world lack adequate shelter. The mission of Habitat for Humanity International is to help as many people as possible build simple, decent homes in which they live safely, healthfully, and affordably. Habitat's 2,000 affiliates work locally to organize building projects. Donations finance the supplies, and volunteers supply most of the labor. Even so, the homes are not free. The partner families contribute hundreds of hours of labor and also pay for the homes through nonprofit mortgages. Their monthly payments fund more Habitat homes. You can use the pride you can see the pride in the faces of our partner families on the day that they receive the keys to their new home. Habitat's most famous volunteer, former President Jimmy Carter, has observed, "They know that they aren't being given a handout, but a hand up. because they have done their fair share of the work and they will be paying their fair share of the cost. Just as building Habitat homes remakes the lives of these people, so does it transform the lives of volunteers. Many had long wanted to help people in need but really didn't know how until Habitat gave them an opportunity. Now they return to build again and again because of the way that helping people makes you feel. Most have found that no matter how hard they work, they always get more in return than what they put in. Habitat, it's a Christian ministry, welcomes all people to volunteer. Since its founding in 1976, it has built more than 400,000 homes around the world, providing simple, decent, affordable housing for over 2 million people. And I would imagine that that number is probably bigger because this book was published in 2011. And they're still very, very, very active. It's a very active nonprofit organization. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed this book as much as I did. I'm just very upset that I can't be there to read it to you and have a wonderful discussion with y'all, but I want everyone to have a wonderful Christmas. Please stay safe. Wear your mask and wash your hands regularly, okay? I love y'all.